When my grandmother passed away, she left me everything, unlike my parents expected. Soon after, I discovered they had convinced my girlfriend to seduce my brother so she could switch sides and help them steal my inheritance. They thought I was clueless, but the evidence I had saved turned their entire scheme against them. My father's voice crashed through Grandma's small living room. "You can't go on like this," he said, waving a stack of papers. My mother sat stiffly on the sofa, nodding, eyes on the documents instead of on Grandma. Grandma stayed in her worn armchair, back straight, hands resting calmly on her lap. I stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the hall, unsure whether to step in or disappear. This was the house where I had spent half my childhood, yet that night it felt unfamiliar, as if someone had quietly moved the walls when I wasn't looking. Most days with her were nothing like that. My normal evenings began with the soft scrape of her front gate and the smell of tea and fried onions drifting from the kitchen. I would hang my jacket on the old hook by the door, the same one I used as a boy, and hear her call, "Close the door properly, the draft will catch us both." She always had the kettle on, 2 cups ready, biscuits on a small plate. We sat at the round table, knees almost touching, steam rising between us. She asked about my day and waited for the real answer, not the polished version I gave everyone else. With Grandma I didn't have to pretend. I told her about delayed pay, rude customers, and nights when I lay awake wondering if I would ever move forward. She listened without checking a clock or a phone. Sometimes she replied with a short memory from her own younger years. Sometimes she just held my hand until I stopped frowning. "You feel things deeply," she would say. "That's not weakness." In her house my worries shrank to a size I could carry. Outside they grew again, especially whenever I stepped into my parents' neat living room. My parents and I spoke carefully, as if every sentence might be weighed. My father asked about income, promotion, and long-term goals. My mother asked about impressions, how I dressed, what people thought of my girlfriend, whether my boss saw potential. They weren't unkind, but there was always a quiet measuring in their eyes. Love came tied to conditions. I learned to answer safely and hide my doubts. Grandma, watching from the side, seemed to understand more than she said. She never argued with them, yet her eyes followed their movements whenever money appeared in any conversation. Little by little she began to trust me with tasks that carried more weight than fetching groceries. She asked me to drive her to the bank, to sit with her in the lawyer's waiting room, to help her sort letters from the insurance company. "You read slowly," she told me once, smiling. "That's a compliment." At the bank she read every line before signing, asked for copies, and slid them into a brown folder she guarded carefully. I noticed how her jaw tightened whenever my father's name came up near the word account. On the walk home she changed the subject before I could ask why. My girlfriend joined us often on weekends. She was lively, quick to laugh, ready with praise for Grandma's cooking. The two of them would sit on the sofa, swapping recipes and stories, while I fixed squeaky doors or wobbly chairs. Watching them together filled me with simple hopes. A modest wedding someday, Sunday lunches at Grandma's table, maybe children climbing the same stairs I once did. In my mind, time would soften the sharp edges of my parents' expectations. I imagined a future where everyone eventually settled into a gentle rhythm. I wanted to believe that very badly. The family dinner that changed everything started like any other. My mother arranged it, saying it would be good for all of us to sit properly as a family. She arrived early to straighten the tablecloth and adjust plates that were already straight. My father came with a bottle of sparkling drink and a careful smile. My girlfriend brought a small bouquet. Grandma put the flowers into her favorite chipped vase and fussed over the food. For the first hour, the talk stayed light. Traffic, television, the neighbor's new dog. I remember thinking maybe we were finally learning how to be together. Then my father leaned forward, rested his elbows on the table, and asked Grandma if she had reconsidered simplifying her finances. His tone was polite, but each word pushed. He suggested it would be safer if someone younger and more capable managed things on her behalf. Grandma set down her fork and met his gaze. "I am old," she said quietly, "but I still know what I am doing." My mother laughed a little too loudly and spoke of how confusing paperwork could be. My father pressed on, mentioning her recent clinic visits and the risk of leaving matters unsettled. The air thickened. My mother's smile thinned. My girlfriend fell silent beside me, fingers tracing the edge of her glass. I felt the urge to speak up, yet childhood habits held me in my chair. Under the table, Grandma's hand found mine. Her grip was steady. "My arrangements are made," she said. "They are written and they are mine." My father's jaw tightened, but my mother touched his arm and he forced the discussion to an awkward close. We finished the meal with forced small talk. When the front door finally shut behind them, the house seemed to exhale. Not long after that evening, her health began to slip. At first it was just tiredness and swollen ankles. Then there were tests, hospital beds, and long corridors that smelled of disinfectant. I sat by her side whenever I could, holding her hand while machines hummed quietly. My parents visited, but their attention kept drifting toward doctors, forms, and dates. In the parking lot they spoke in low voices about responsibilities and who would handle what. My girlfriend tried to comfort me, but I sometimes caught her watching my parents with a thoughtful, distant look I didn't know how to read. On one of her clearer days, Grandma asked the nurse to leave us alone. The room was dim and quiet. She took my hand, her fingers cool but firm. "You will manage," she said. "You are stronger than you think. Don't be afraid to stand alone if you must." Tears burned my eyes. I wanted to promise I would never be alone, that family would surround me, but somehow the words stayed stuck. I just nodded and pressed her hand to my forehead. A few days later she was gone, and the world felt strangely flat and loud at the same time. The days after her passing blurred into calls, visits, and polite condolences. My parents moved quickly, arranging the service, talking to the bank, booking a meeting with her lawyer. My mother reminded me more than once to bring any papers she gave you. My father kept saying, "We need to settle everything properly." I tried to focus on choosing her favorite flowers and telling her old neighbors about the funeral. Even then, a small part of me remembered her warning and watched the way my parents' eyes lit up when the word estate was used. The will was read in a quiet office lined with shelves. The lawyer, a calm man with silver hair, greeted us and asked us to sit. My parents, my brother, my girlfriend, and I formed a stiff row of chairs. He opened a folder and began to read in a steady voice. Legal phrases flowed past me until I heard my name. My name tied to her house, her savings, and the words "sole beneficiary." For a moment I stopped breathing. I felt my father go very still beside me. My mother's fingers tightened around her handbag. My brother stared at the floor. My girlfriend's hand slid into mine under the table. "She trusted you," she whispered. I turned to her, searching her face for simple joy, for support, for something clean. Instead, just for a second, I saw a flicker of calculation in her eyes, there and gone before I could be sure. I told myself I was imagining it, that grief was playing tricks on me. As we left the office, the lawyer handed me a thick folder of documents that suddenly carried my name. They felt heavy in my hands, heavy with love, heavy with responsibility, and heavy with a faint unease I could not yet explain. The silence after their whispered plotting clung to me like smoke. I stayed hidden in the hallway, my breath shallow, my pulse hammering against my ribs. Every word I had overheard replayed in my mind with cruel precision. "When he finally signs, your parents promised." They weren't speaking about me as family or as someone they loved. I was an obstacle, a lock they were waiting to pick. I slipped back into my room, careful not to let the floor creak. The house felt different now, heavier, as though the walls themselves had absorbed their betrayal. My grandmother's portrait hung above my desk, her eyes steady, her smile faint but knowing. I whispered to her frame, "You were right. They're not what they seem." The next morning my parents arrived earlier than usual. My mother carried a basket of fruit, her voice syrupy sweet. "We thought you might need some company," she said, brushing my hair back like I was still a child. My father followed with a stack of envelopes, pretending to be casual. "Just routine paperwork," he explained, sliding them onto the table. I noticed how his eyes flicked toward me, then away as though afraid I might see through the act. I forced a smile, thanked them, and tucked the envelopes aside. Later, when they left, I opened them carefully. Most were harmless, utility bills, insurance notices, but one stood out. A letter from the family lawyer addressed to me but already opened. The crease was sharp, the flap torn unevenly. My father's fingerprints smudged the edge. That night I sat alone in the living room, the ticking of the clock louder than usual. My girlfriend walked in, her phone glowing in her hand. She didn't notice me at first. She was smiling at a message, her thumb hovering as if she couldn't wait to reply. When she finally looked up, her smile vanished. "Oh, I didn't see you," she said, slipping the phone into her pocket. I wanted to ask who she was texting, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I nodded and pretended to be tired. She sat beside me, close enough that her perfume lingered, but far enough that the warmth we once shared felt absent. Days blurred together. My parents' visits grew more frequent, their voices softer, their gestures exaggerated. My girlfriend spent longer hours with my brother, sometimes disappearing with him under the excuse of helping him job hunt. I began to notice the smallest details. The way she laughed at his jokes but barely smiled at mine, the way she leaned in when he spoke, her hand brushing his arm as if by accident. One evening I walked into the kitchen and found them standing close, whispering. The moment they saw me, they stepped apart, their faces flushed. My brother cleared his throat. "We were just talking about opportunities," he said. My girlfriend nodded too quickly, her eyes darting to the floor. I carried the image with me all night, lying awake, staring at the ceiling. My grandmother's voice echoed in memory. "Keep records. Trust your instincts." So I began writing everything down. Each strange glance, each hushed conversation, each misplaced envelope. My notebook filled with dates, times, and fragments of overheard words. The more I observed, the clearer the pattern became. My parents were orchestrating something, weaving threads between my girlfriend and my brother, tightening the net around me. They wanted me isolated, doubting myself, softened enough to sign whatever papers they placed in front of me. One afternoon my mother called while I was out walking. Her tone was gentle, almost pleading. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't carry all this weight alone. Let us help. Just sign the transfer and we'll take care of everything." I paused on the sidewalk, the phone pressed to my ear, the world around me fading. "I'll think about it," I said, keeping my voice calm. Inside, my resolve hardened. When I returned home, my girlfriend was waiting. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Your mom says you're being stubborn," she said lightly, as though it were a joke. "Maybe you should listen to them. They only want what's best." Her words cut deeper than she realized. I nodded, pretending to agree, while inside I felt the ground shifting. The turning point came a week later. My brother invited me to join them for dinner. The three of them, my parents, my girlfriend, and him, sat together, laughing, sharing stories, their voices blending in a harmony that excluded me. I watched from across the table, my fork untouched, my appetite gone. At one moment my father raised his glass. "To family," he said, his eyes glinting. My girlfriend clinked her glass against his, smiling. My brother followed, grinning wide. I lifted mine slowly, but the toast tasted bitter. Later that night I overheard them again. This time it was my girlfriend's voice, low and urgent. "He's close. Just a little more pressure and he'll give in." My brother chuckled. "Don't worry. Mom and Dad promised. Once he signs, we're set." I froze in the hallway, my fists clenched. The betrayal was complete, undeniable. They weren't just conspiring, they were celebrating my downfall before it even happened. I returned to my room, my notebook open, my pen trembling in my hand. I wrote every word I had heard, every detail, every betrayal. My grandmother's teachings guided me: patience, observation, proof. I would not confront them yet. I would wait, gather, and let their own greed undo them. In the days that followed, I played my role carefully. I smiled when they visited, laughed at their jokes, pretended to be the trusting son and boyfriend they believed I still was. Inside, though, I was sharper, colder, watching every move. My girlfriend tried to draw me out, asking casual questions, testing my mood. "Are you okay?" she asked one evening, her hand brushing mine. I looked at her, searching for the girl I once loved, but all I saw was a stranger wearing her face. "I'm fine," I said, my voice steady. My brother grew bolder, teasing me about responsibilities, hinting at how complicated things must be for me. My parents continued their gentle pressure, their words dripping with false concern. Through it all, I kept recording, saving messages, copying documents, building a quiet fortress of evidence. Each page of my notebook became a shield, each screenshot a weapon. The house no longer felt like home. It was a stage, and I was the actor pretending not to know the script. Yet beneath the performance, a fire burned. I would not scream, I would not break. I would wait until the curtain fell, and when it did, their plan would collapse under the weight of their own deception. And so I carried on, silent but resolute, the ache in my chest replaced by a steady determination. They thought I was blind, but I was watching. They thought I was weak, but I was preparing. The game had begun, and though they believed they were winning, I knew the truth. Patience was my weapon and proof was my power. The decision settled inside me like a stone dropped into still water. No more waiting for them to change, no more hoping for sincerity where none existed. I would act, but carefully, quietly, the way Grandma had taught me. The next morning I walked into the lawyer's office carrying my notebook, my phone, and a folder of documents. His office smelled faintly of old leather and ink, the kind of place where secrets were weighed and measured. He looked up from his desk, his eyes kind but sharp. "You've been holding a lot," he said, gesturing for me to sit. I laid everything out, the screenshots, the notes, the recordings I had managed to capture. My voice trembled at first, but as I spoke, the tremor gave way to steadiness. He listened without interruption, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When I finished, he leaned back. "You've done well," he said. "You've been patient. That patience is your strength." Together we discussed options. He explained the legal boundaries, the risks, the ways to protect myself without crossing lines that could backfire. "We'll let them walk into their own trap," he said. "You don't need to fight them with anger. You fight them with truth." Leaving his office, I felt lighter, though the path ahead was still shadowed. At home I began my performance. I let my shoulders sag, my voice falter. I pretended to be overwhelmed, confused, unsure. My parents noticed immediately. My mother stroked my hair, whispering, "You don't have to carry this alone." My father placed a hand on my shoulder, his tone firm but gentle. "Just sign the papers. We'll manage everything for you." I nodded vaguely, never agreeing, never refusing. My girlfriend joined in, her words soft but insistent. "They only want to help. Don't make it harder than it needs to be." My brother echoed them, repeating phrases as though rehearsed. "It's just for convenience," he said one evening, his eyes uncertain. Inside I was calm, watching, recording. Each push, each suggestion, each slip of confidence became another piece of evidence. They believed they were winning. That belief made them careless. The day of the lawyer's invitation arrived. His office felt colder than before, the air heavy with anticipation. My parents entered dressed in their finest clothes, my mother's pearls gleaming, my father's tie perfectly knotted. My girlfriend sat close to my brother, her hand resting lightly on his arm. They looked triumphant, certain the moment had come. The lawyer greeted them warmly, then gestured for us all to sit. He began with polite words, speaking of family, of trust, of responsibility. My parents leaned forward eagerly, my father clearing his throat as if ready to claim victory. Then the lawyer opened the folder. One by one he presented the messages, the recordings, the notes. My mother's words, my father's promises, my girlfriend's whispers, all laid bare in that quiet room. I sat still, my hands trembling slightly but my voice silent. Their own voices filled the space, undeniable, inescapable. The storm broke instantly. My mother burst into tears, clutching her chest. "I was only worried for him," she cried, her voice cracking. My father's face reddened, his voice rising. "This is her fault," he shouted, pointing at my girlfriend. "She twisted everything." My girlfriend recoiled, her eyes flashing. "You used me," she spat, turning on them. "You promised me things you never meant to give." My brother sat frozen, his mouth open, his eyes wide. Slowly the realization sank in, he had been a pawn, not a partner. His shoulders slumped, his gaze dropped to the floor. I finally spoke, my voice calm, steady. "Grandma trusted me," I said. "She left this to me because she believed I would honor her. I won't let anyone steal what she meant for my future." The room fell silent. My words hung in the air, heavier than their cries, sharper than their accusations. After that day everything shifted. My girlfriend tried to call to explain, but I let the phone ring unanswered. The bond we once shared was gone, replaced by a hollow echo. I cut ties, not with anger but with clarity. My parents continued their visits, their voices softer now, their eyes less certain. I kept my distance, polite but firm. I no longer allowed their words to seep into me. Their concern felt like a mask I had already torn away. My brother came to me weeks later, his face pale, his voice low. "I didn't see it," he said, shame heavy in his tone. "I thought they cared. I thought she cared. I was wrong." I looked at him, seeing not the conspirator but the boy I had grown up with, the brother who had once shared secrets and laughter. Forgiveness did not come easily, but slowly I chose it. Not to forget but to release the weight. With part of Grandma's inheritance I began to restore her old house. The walls were repainted, the garden replanted, the rooms filled with light again. Each nail hammered, each brushstroke laid felt like a conversation with her, a way of honoring her memory. I also supported causes she had cared about. Quiet charities, small community efforts, places where kindness mattered more than recognition. It felt right, like carrying her spirit forward. In the stillness of those days I found peace. Not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of understanding. I had learned that love without honesty is a trap, that blood is not a free pass to trust, and that sometimes the family who truly stands by you is the one you choose, not just the one you are born into. The house became my sanctuary. I would sit on the porch at dusk, the sky painted in shades of gold and violet, and feel her presence in the breeze. The betrayal no longer defined me. The lesson did. And in that lesson I found strength. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in the quiet certainty that I had protected what mattered, and in doing so I had protected myself.